Ever since I first released the trailer to my short documentary film Cutting Edge, I got a lot of questions on how I achieved its look, especially the color grading. I consciously decided to go for a more stylized and filmic look for that project that I would usually go for. I tried to complement the story with a specific color palette and add film grain in post to put emphasis on the past of her story. So in this video I will show you how I color graded this film and which plugins and LUTs that I used so you can recreate a similar style for your next project. My name is Damien Cooper and welcome to me making a video so you purchase my LUTs. I shot this entire film almost exclusively on the Canon C70, but I also used a DJI Mavic 2 Pro and I also used a Canon C300 Mark III for some shots. But the overall process is pretty much the same for all of these. And in this overlook I will use Final Cut Pro, but everything that I will show you, you can easily recreate in Premiere Pro or DaVinci Resolve. So let's start with our interview setup, and as you can see, importing it right into Final Cut, everything looks flat and flat because we shot everything in C-Log 2 with the Cinema Gamut color space. So the first thing we need to do is we need to convert this to a Rec. 709 color space. And the way that I do it is with Canon's own conversion LUTs, and you can find them on their website, and I will also link them down in the description below. And those LUTs are commonly referred to either camera LUTs, 1D LUTs or conversion LUTs, and you can apply them in the inspector tab if we switch from basic to extended and then apply it under the camera LUT tab. We take our Cinema Gamut Canon Log 2 to BT709 Wide Dynamic Range LUT. So now everything already looks a lot better. We have more contrast, we have more colors, but it still looks pretty flat, and this is because we used a haze machine on set. So now we need to apply some color correction, and that means we need to adjust our exposure, contrast and colors. And the one thing we need for this is our RGB waveforms, and you can find them in any common editor. And the way we do this is by adding color wheels. So the first thing we want to do is to raise our highlights so that they're not extending over the 100 mark. The next thing we do is we want to bring down our shadows all the way so that they're almost going for 0. Usually at this point I would probably add a bit more saturation to our image, but since I wanted to achieve this old film look, I'm actually going to leave it at that and maybe even going to take saturation away later. Our next step is to add one of our custom LUTs. The LUT that I decided on for this interview setup is from our Canon version 2 LUT pack and it's called Brown Sugar. This is obviously way too much because now we're at 100%, so we want to dial it down to 0 and then slightly add it back in until we like our result. Right around here at the 50% mark. And this already looks pretty great in my opinion, so there's a link down to my LUTs in the description below. Like and subscribe, and I hope to see you on the next one. Okay, maybe it's not that simple, so let's just add a couple more adjustments. But quite honestly, in my opinion, that already looks amazing for this interview setup. The only thing we did is we added a bit of contrast and then we added one of our custom LUTs, and I'm actually pretty satisfied with the way that looks right now. But since I told you I wanted to have it look like an old film camera, let's add some film grain. And the way that I do this is with a plugin called Film Convert Nitrate. So let's add it right now, and as you can see, now she looks pretty much dead. So let's open the controls right here, and here we can choose between different kind of film stock presets as well as grain presets. Since I was already quite happy with the way that our colors and contrast levels looked, I don't want to have this film stock emulation affected too much. So here I'm going with the standard film stock of KD5207 Vis 3, and I'm going to reduce the luma all the way so that it's not affecting our contrast levels, and I'm also going to dial back the chroma levels, which are affecting our saturation levels, and I maybe leave in just a little bit of it to just desaturate it and give this a bit more of this desaturated film look. As for our film size preset, we're going to choose the 35mm full frame. If we were to go to, let's say, a 16mm, that would add way too much grain to our image, so I'm quite happy with what the 35mm full frame preset looks like. In all honesty, you probably won't see too much of this after uploading it to YouTube because it will fall victim to the YouTube compression, but if you can see a little bit of it, that's already a win in my books. So now let's look at the before and after, and I'm actually quite happy with what it looks like. And all we did was add some contrast, then add our custom LUT and add a little bit of film grain with a tiny bit of 20% of a film stock preset. Next up, let's take this shot of her we filmed in Switzerland. As you can see, we already converted it to Rec. 709. It's also quite well exposed, so we only need to raise our highlights ever so slightly, and then we can already apply one of our custom LUTs. And I'm going to apply the same custom LUT that I applied before, Canon version 2 Brown Sugar. And I'm going to dial this all the way back and add a bit more in. And as you can see, it's turning everything completely blue. So we need to counter this with our color wheels. So let's add more color wheels on top, and then we're going to push the midtones all the way towards orange. And here we need to take care that we're not pushing it towards the green too much, not towards the magenta too much, but just find her skin tone right in the middle and give this a nice push. And the way we can check our skin tones is by switching from our RGB waveforms to our vector scopes. And here you can see this line, and this is what's called the skin tone line. So we want to have our orange tones right on the skin tone line. If we were to push towards the magenta too much or towards the green, then we would stray off our skin tone line, and that would definitely not look correct. But right here, we are right in the middle, and I actually quite like this. Now we can fine tune our custom LUT a little bit more, because I still think it's a little too much. So let's decrease it right to around here. I already like this, but I want to make the red in the background pop a lot more. And we can do this with hue and saturation curves. The problem we have here is that our skin tones are pretty similar to the mountains in the background, so we need to create a mask first. How you do this is different in every editor. In Final Cut it's pretty easy. You click here, add a tracker, and then we just basically loosely put it on top of her face and we hit Analyze. So now we want to enhance the reds in the background. Note that we are currently working on the inside of our mask, so this is her face. So we need to go to the outside of our mask, and then we want to attack just the colors in the background. So we're going with a hue versus saturation, and we're going to sample the reds in the background. Then we can increase the saturation, and you can notice that her face isn't affected, and we're just affecting the mountains in the background. So here's the before and after. We have a lot more saturation, but we only affected the red colors that we wanted to. And since we're already here and we have the mask, why not just adjust your skin tones a little bit too? To make her face stand out a little bit more, we can also add some color wheels. We also track her face again. Then we open our color wheels tab, and we can raise the highlights by a bit and maybe the midtones as well. That was over a little bit too much. Let's add some contrast, bring down the shadows, and we can see the before and after. So now we gave her entire face a bit more contrast, and we make it stand out from the background a little bit more. I actually realized that this was a little bit too much saturation, so just get rid of it a bit. Okay, now we went from this pretty cold, boring looking image to way more saturation, because this was a part of the film where she just found her confidence and her strength. So I wanted to emphasize this a little bit with colors and contrast. The last thing we need to do is add our film grain again. So we add our film convert plugin. As you can see, it's taken away all the saturation that we just added in. So what we need to do is we need to reduce our film luma and chroma levels, and then we can add a bit of the chroma levels back in to around 20%, and maybe even a bit of the luma to add more of the contrast. Let's see before and after. And I like this because it gives the whole video a bit of an old vibe. All right, let's quickly do 2 more shots like this. One of those is one of the clips from the beginning, and we will apply the same methods that we did to all the other clips. Conversion LUT is already applied. Let's raise the highlights and maybe add a bit more contrast, and that's pretty much it. Now let's add our custom LUT, and we do the same thing. We add the version 2 brown sugar, way too much. Let's dial it down to around 50%. And as we can see, it's way too cold. We want to emphasize that it is cold, but this is obviously way overboard. So we add more color wheels, and we push orange and brown into the midtones yet again. Way more saturation here. Let's see before and after. That already looks so much better. So now if you look at the before and after, you can see that we now achieved this brown greenish look that I really like and kind of associate with old film stock. I think our clip can benefit from a bit more saturation, so let's add some to it. And as always, our last step, add some film grain. This is yet again way too much, so let's decrease our film chroma and film luma to 0, add some of the film chroma back in, just about 20%. And there we go. This is the before and after. So one more time, we went from this boring video looking purple kind of clip to this earthy green brown tone looking cinematic look. Okay, so let's do one more clip, and this is from our DJI Mavic 2 Pro, and we want to match this to the overall color palette that we used in all of our other shots. I filmed this in D-Log, so we don't have a conversion LUT, so we need to convert it manually. Let's add some color wheels and just add a bit more contrast by lowering our shadows just before the 0 mark, and add some highlights, but we don't want to clip anything, so let's just leave it here. The next thing we're going to do, as always, is add a custom LUT, and we chose one from our Mavic LUTs pack, and we chose the same one that we used before, and as we can see, way over the top, so we need to dial it back all the way to 0, and then add in just as much as we need. And just with all of our other clips, we want to add a lot of contrast here. That already looks pretty decent, but now let's add a bit of color to it. So we add another color wheel, and then we push some orange into our midtones, a bit on the green side. Let's see the before and after, pretty boring and flat looking, and we added a lot of contrast and matched the colors to all of our other clips. I actually think we went a tad overboard with our contrast, so let's go to our first color wheel and raise the shadows just like this. So let's add film convert. And this already looks pretty decent. I think for this clip, we don't need to lower our chroma all the way to 0, because I kind of like the way that it affects our image. So let's go to around 70% here. We can reduce our film luma, because this is all it does is just adding more contrast, and we already have plenty of this. But there we go, I already like this. So there you have it. This was a little insight on how I color graded my film Cutting Edge, the LUTs and plugins that I used. And speaking of LUTs, there's a link down in the description below with all the LUTs that I used for this film, and I have them available for Blackmagic, Canon, Sony, and DJI Mavic series. And if you use the discount code Cutting Edge, you can get 10% off. I hope you liked this video, and if you did, then please give it a thumbs up, because it really helps the channel grow. And if you have any more questions about anything about Cutting Edge, then leave a comment down below, because I will answer them in a future behind the scenes and full making of. And this could be about storytelling, camera equipment, locations, etc, etc. So thanks for watching, and while you're already here, check out 2 more videos that YouTube thinks you might like, and I hope to see you on the next one.